If the recent polar vortex has you questioning why you still live in Western New York, or if the gloomy winter weather in general has you feeling less than upbeat, don't worry, you are not alone. You may be dealing with a common issue known as seasonal affective disorder. It saps your energy and might be the reason you're craving more sleep or having a hard time focusing on specific tasks. Why does this happen, and how can we combat these symptoms? Dr. Joshua Wartzel of UR Medicine Mental Health and Wellness joins me to answer those questions and more. And welcome. Thank you for being here.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
So for some, this may be a very new term, seasonal affective disorder. So if you can break it down, what is it? How does it happen?
Sure. So seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, S-A-D, is a very common form of depression that occurs in the fall and winter and should subside by the spring and the summer. If it doesn't, we start to think about it being a different type of depression. And it looks very much like other depressions. People will be sadder, feel worthless, guilty. They'll note changes in their appetite, usually increased appetite, changes in their sleep, increased sleep. They'll also often comment on lower energy and concentration.
So do we know why this happens in this particular span of months that you mentioned?
Definitely. So seasonal affective disorder is more or less a disease of circadian rhythm. And so when there's less light out there, your body is not necessarily able to know when it should be awake and go to sleep. So we've evolved to start releasing a chemical called melatonin right when it starts to get dark outside, and then to turn that chemical down when it starts to get bright. But in these extreme latitudes, like here in our neck of the woods, that melatonin is dysregulated. So basically that's one part of it. The other part of it is there's another chemical called serotonin, a neurotransmitter, that's relevant.
So for the symptoms that you mentioned, do people experiencing seasonal affective disorder, will they experience all of those symptoms, or could it be just a few of them?
Could be just a few. The most common for sure seen in the majority are feelings of sadness. Around 60 to 70% will note changes in their appetite and sleep. But then there's a whole slew of different things that can be seen as well.
So I'm curious as to whether there are certain people who are more susceptible to the symptoms, or if there are people who aren't. They would likely avoid something such as this. Like, would someone who is already suffering from major depression, would this be something that be a natural thing to take place?
That's a great question. So first off, it's more common in women, 3 times more common in women. It also starts usually in the 20s to 30s, although can be seen later in life as well. It's usually just when it starts. In terms of whether or not people can be more or less susceptible if they have other mental illness, actually I was just involved with a study where we showed that all different types of psychiatric illness that are regulated by serotonin show an increased prevalence when you're in regions of lower light and lower temperature.
That's interesting, because it makes me think. I have family in Florida, and I tell people they like to send me photographs of walks on the beach when I'm in the grocery store grabbing milk and bread and preparing for a snowstorm. And I'm wondering, is this something that could affect them or someone who lives in another sunny state or city more so than it affects us here in Western New York?
Sure, and it can. Actually, the prevalence of SAD is around 4% down in Florida. It's around 20%, unfortunately, up in our neck of the woods. I believe that statistic was for New Hampshire.
So talk to me just a little bit about the types of things that people can do to re-energize themselves. The types of things they can do. You mentioned feelings of worthlessness, hopelessness. What can we do to beat this? Definitely.
So sometimes people will self-treat, maybe unwittingly, by eating more carb-rich foods. So you mentioned eating bread. This is actually a building block for serotonin. So you will feel somewhat better from it, but there's the side effect of gaining weight. So I wouldn't recommend it. It's okay, you can sleep good. But exercise is a wonderful approach, non-medicinally, to improving your serotonin function.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say there's other medicines and treatments as well that we offer.
So is this, I guess, based on that, medicines and treatments, is seasonal affective disorder something that a doctor will, it's something that can be diagnosed, or is it something that people generally tend to self-diagnose?
Many people may first self-diagnose it, and they'll go to their primary care doctor and note that they're depressed in the winter. And both primary care doctors and psychiatrists will treat it.
So I'm curious as to whether, we're talking about, with SAD, just a case of the winter blues that we so often hear, people describe, especially here in Western New York, or if this is something that people really need to pay attention to if they notice some of the symptoms that you mentioned, and they also notice that they don't go away.
For sure. So definitely for those who have noticed this perhaps over a winter or two, I recommend them seeking help. And we have multiple treatments such as light therapy, pretty benign. It's shown to be very effective in 2/3 of our patients. And it's something very simple to do. You would just have a light box that you would use while eating breakfast or reading in the morning for around half an hour. And so it's really not much of an intervention. If there's concern that the symptoms do persist outside of the winter months, then definitely there are other diagnoses that you could consider, other types of depression.
The light box is interesting. I've never thought about something like that being able to impact mood. But are there, in terms of are there like home remedies? I know you mentioned exercise. Are there other things that you would suggest that can help people feel a bit better?
Sure. Melatonin is actually a medicine that you can get in the pharmacy over the counter. Some patients will benefit from a very low dose of melatonin in the mornings. Or actually I should say a little after the morning. If you take 0.125 milligrams around 7 hours after waking up, so if you're waking up around 9, then you take it at 4, that pushes your sleep cycle up forward so that there's some improvement in around 2/3 of patients. There's other medicines we can prescribe as well.
That's interesting. I always think of melatonin as something that I take before I'm going to bed, as opposed to a little bit midway through the day. So for people who are hearing this conversation right now and they're thinking, you know what, some of those symptoms sound familiar to me, but I can deal with it. We've got just a few more months left, of the winter, and I can make it through. What would you suggest to them? Or I guess I should first ask, what can happen if you don't address symptoms such as this? Can it affect your everyday life?
Oh, for sure. Some patients who are depressed will sleep more. It might affect their work, certainly their productivity and their happiness. And I would encourage anyone who's feeling those symptoms to come.
All right, unfortunately, we are out of time, but a special thank you to Dr. Joshua Wartzel for your insight. And you can learn more about seasonal affective disorder and how to get help. Go to our website, wxxinews.org, and click on the Need to Know link.